And OCOs, of course, OCOs is just informational. There's no discussion about what we're going to do with OCOs, I guess, until those dollars go away, and they're temp, most 99% are temp positions. And so where there's perms, we're going to have some issues whenever OCO dries up, but that's when the can will kick down the road and we figure out what happens. CMEs, this is what we're pulling out of the system. It is not going to be a good number. I can tell you that. I mean, it's what's coming in on that's supposed to be in this contract manpower equivalent database that everybody is supposed to be, the contractors are supposed to be inputting their numbers into. And boy, that is just the weakest piece of information that we have right now. I'm giving you that just as information. You can certainly, when you see contracts come across your desk for approval, and you see this, this ISR number is reporting 4, and they've got 12 on the thing, it's probably going to beg a question as to, okay, how come all 12 aren't in the database? So you're basically going to become traffic cops for trying to clean up some of the CME reporting. But since the contractors are the ones that input it, I mean, there's very little leverage we have over them.
At Fort Polk, we submitted an insourcing request a couple of years ago to insource 45 FTEs, insource 35, replace 45 CMEs with 35 FTEs, a reduction of 10 personnel, primarily 4s and 5s, in the HR arena, that we could do all these services with less money, about $500,000 a year less than we were paying the contractor, and that had been an A76 5-year contract that was coming up for expiration and resolicitation. The HR director decided, I think I could bring this back in-house cheaper, with more flexibility, and get change for my dollar. Good idea. So we did it. Everything was going along swimmingly until the IMCOM headquarters tried to come up with numbers for the FY12 then TDA. Currently, Fort Polk is operating with 31 temps and terms because they never got the authorizations from the headquarters pending resolution of these issues. So when you look at the TDA numbers for that garrison, it's got no permanent authorizations for that service, and they're operating with temps and terms. So I would say, your question, David, when are the temps and terms going to go away? You would kill that installation if the temps and terms went away, because it would take everyone out of the HR.
Let's jump ahead. The first time we do the baseline, in the lower left-hand corner, he hasn't gotten to it yet, you see the 1 to N list prioritized. The RD will look to have those items in priority order funded, so if a guy's jumping to number 6, but he hasn't funded 1 through 5, the question is why. So when he does a reclama and says, I need more non-pay dollars, and through the RM channels is able to do it, the expectation is that he's going to fund number 1 before he funds number 2. And he's going to fund number 2 before he funds number 3. So if you adjust the numbers on top and the baseline changes, you should also see a change in the UFERs on the bottom.
The 2 little items to the right, these are, I put them there because this is where they fit. Okay. There's no magic as to why they're there. These are 2 things that the RD has had some level of interest in here lately. Monetary awards, the 1% target. We've got the new policy out. It's going to be 1%. I've given them the way we did the math on this, and the way we will do the math on this favors the garrison, because generally awards is 1% of base pay, and I'm taking 1% of total pay. So the rules haven't come out and changed that yet, because when I do 1% of overall pay, what am I picking up? Overtime. And so if you're in the firefighters, you guys they're gonna do good. But it is an aggregate number. Okay, so I think the garrisons are only being held to 1% in the aggregate, not down to the ISR level. I hope not. I hope it's not to the ISR level, but we will aggregate this. There will be a roll-up sheet for Fort, like for example, here for Fort Benning, which has that on there. This just kind of gives you an idea as to how this program is executing their 1% monetary awards target. And it also on their overtime. I know everybody says we're going to eliminate overtime, but those of you who've worked at Garrison who've had a relatively strong union, who have it in the labor relations agreement that the firefighters are going to get X this and X that, and maybe the DOL and the gate guards or the other ones, then that's the way it's going to work out until a new labor relations negotiation occurs and you have a new agreement. So there will be budgeted overtime. And this is direct pay budgeted overtime. The customer makes me have overtime, it's reimbursed, and I'm not tracking that on this sheet. but this is what you're paying for. This is what the garrison is paying for out of their money as far as overtime goes. Okay, now I'm going to walk down to the budget piece. Some of this we've already touched on. These are, you'll see down there what elements of the budget that Mr. Tyndall specifically wants tracked. Payroll, support contracts, utilities, GSA vehicle supplies, TDY equipment, and other. And don't look at these in priority order. Other contains some pretty hefty bills that are important. DOL, other is probably going to include your DITI moves, household good movement. There's some big ticket stuff in there that I don't want you to look at other and think it's just other, and it's just papers and supplies, and it's some pretty big ticket things in there. The FY base, adjusted for inflation and growth. This would be exactly what I was telling you that Mitch is going to do, and he'll make available to you. It's going to be an audit trail of what is in the base. We'll vet that with the garrison RMs, which will vet it locally. They'll come back to us and then give us a base, an agreed-to base start number. So what you get back in that column should be what is already agreed to by the garrison as their start point. Then they will come in on the next column and identify all of their non-inflationary growth that they anticipate in FY12, or decline. In this particular case, it's the first year I think we put a negative on there, because we got a 15% reduction coming, and they may be planning to reduce services or functions as part of their requirement now. And so what we will see then is a plus or minus. This will be a garrison inputted number, and this will be a number then that you will validate with some narrative that comes with validated number. That's where you guys and the garrison's going to come to some agreement on what their start point number really is. The region validated number will become the garrison's baseline.
And it's not based on the fact that the garrisons put it in there and agreed with us. The RD is the one who either says, I agree with that number, or here's your, the RD has in fact validated a higher number than the PBG when he saw that the headquarters got it wrong. And he's also validated a lower number than requested by the garrison because he didn't buy the growth briefing justification. So it can be either higher or lower, but it's not our number as a functional. We have to vet it, and then the garrison commander briefs it, and whatever goes in there becomes the baseline criteria that we use.
Everybody's come to agreement on the region validated number. That is the garrison's contract with the RD. That's the number that we are now measuring as their requirements number. Now, headquarters validated number. Those of you that have participated in the process last year with us, the MDEP POCs, we would submit up the garrison's requirements to the MDEP to G8, and then G8 vets that with the MDEP POC. The difference between either what the garrison submitted as their base, what the region validated, and what the headquarters finally came up with as funding number. Understanding what that gap is very important, because IMCOM is not going to fund for what they did not validate. And so if they didn't validate a contract, they will a lot of them will specifically say that. And so the garrison shouldn't be under the impression that because they put it in their spend plan, that IMCOM is going to give them money to fund that. What we've done is walk through the requirement side of the spend plan. You'll see that it gives you then the over-unders on the dollars, and that is a measured difference between region validated and the headquarters validated number, because that's where your UFR lies, and that's where you'll need to understand what's in that 30K in this particular. We're going to get over to the execution side of this. And and you're going to see that I've replicated some columns, and there's a practical reason for that, just based on our history this past year. Starting PBG. That is how much money that the IMCOM commits to fund that particular program at that garrison. And it'll come by MDEP. I'm not going to get it by ISR. And so that may force me to adjust my second sheet that I'll go over with you shortly. But basically, they fund us by MDEP. They're not giving it to us by ISR. Sometimes it is one for one. I can easily crosswalk them. A lot of times, they're going to give me one number. QNMG is going to get one number. They're not going to get one for EEO and one for plans and one for everybody else. Now, you see a current PBG number. This number had changed all year long. And so what I'm trying to get is an idea between the start point and where we are today. Because that allows me and you to both track the changes and probably relevant reasons for change. Now, starting validated required number. Now, this will be, again, the region number, if it isn't, it is in this particular case. And then the current validated number. Again, the requirements change also. And so what I wanted you to be able to do is be able to see the difference between what you started at and where you're ending at. This becomes important to us as we develop our baseline for the next year, because this will identify changes in the program that we're directed to happen and approved and validated by you and then approved by the RD to happen. Year-to-date execution, it's just what it is, year-to-date execution. What we then do is we take pay, and I'm only projecting pay because you cannot project non-pay. Non-pay does not happen in a straight line. It happens on a calendar. And a contract comes due in August, then August is when that money will execute. It won't execute in a straight line. We will fill this out. We will provide this to you when we start racking up execution numbers, and/or requirements numbers. We will engage you and we will walk with you through the process as to then what is expected and what the RD will be. It's going to fund us at 85% of our onboard strength at an average salary rate at the SEAC rate. 88K. 88K is the average rate. It's a little different for firefighters. I'm telling you, it will automatically generate problems because it does not accommodate the overtime agreements. So there's issues with that. So when you see the numbers come out from IMCOM, you're going to automatically run into operational issues that need to be fixed or addressed at the IMCOM level. Clearly, we're going to fund firefighter overtime. I don't know how you get around that, or unless you take risk and close firehouses or reduce hours or reduce coverage. Again, you have to make operational decisions relative to the resource environment that you put into it. That said, I'll take questions on this, but I expect your questions will become easier to answer once we start putting numbers against some of these columns. The key questions, I think you brought this up before, the key questions the RD had been asking, and of course he said this is a living list, but basically in priority order, can you fund your butts in the seat? Can you sustain your FY11 service level? Can you fund your legal requirements? And of course, and can you fund your growth? And basically they're going to answer these questions, yes or no.
And functionals, what you need to be sensitive to is the question of can you fund the legal requirements is really a matter of interpretation. It's up to us to be able to say, is that yea and verily a legal requirement or not? In the environmental world, we'll cite that as a specific example. There are some things that are absolutely statutory. Everything in the environmental world is a legal requirement, guaranteed, no question. I go on record as saying that in a court of law. But whether I do the Integrated Natural Resources Management Plan every 5 years, which is a legal requirement, or let it slip a year, that's not going to send me to jail. But if I don't fix the wastewater treatment plant, I might go to jail. So there are legal requirements and there are legal requirements. So that's really where you're getting into this question, is to say you may have a driver for everything that's on this. We have to separate the wheat from the chaff as to which ones are yea and verily critical and which ones are not.
We anticipate that we're going to be sending out to the garrisons Mitch's audit trail baseline comparison here sometime in the next 2 weeks. We'll have the garrisons looking at that and send that back to us at the end of October. After they got through the year and closed, most of them will push it off till October anyway. We'll do a region validation of those numbers, of the baseline numbers, the 1st to the 23rd of November. And again, we'll provide you guidance and assistance as you're going through that process. Then there is a phase 3, and Mr. Tyndall directed this, is that he wants to start having his back briefs with the garrison commanders relative to these numbers starting, well, he wants them before Christmas. So we will start scheduling those once we've done the validation. We understand there's going to be puts and takes and going back and forth on the numbers. We try to build some flexibility in for that. We will adjust as needed.
The garrison commander briefs it, but if there's any follow-up questions, our functional counterparts need to be able to address it, which is why our validation, that 3 weeks before the briefing, is so important. We want them to succeed in this briefing. We don't want a redo. That means we haven't done our homework.